Once again, we're honestly considering the issues. I will share with you that this morning will be a little more different. My English teacher just groaned in agony somewhere. We're going to be covering today the issue of human rights, and in particular, the subtopics of homosexuality and abortion. So, to that end, I'm going to extend the offer for you to test me. Put me to the test today. And I'll talk more about that later. But in quick review, last week we boldly ventured into another controversial subject, at least in the church, and that was human sexuality. We talked about how a Victorian sex is bad mindset in the church is not only anti-God, because who invented human sexuality, but it is also harmful in the sense that when the church doesn't address this issue, then people are left to go to other sources like the internet to find out what their view of human sexuality is. And I'll just leave that shoe to drop as it will. But I think the crux of the discussion we had last week was, how does one view oneself in human sexuality? You can either think of yourself as being just a biological machine, you just function, thus human sexuality is just a function. And in essence, I'll just be bold. Your job as a functioning biological machine is to allow human sexuality to trick you into procreating. Thus, your job is to try to get women pregnant. And conversely, women are to get pregnant because it's just a function of procreation. Versus the other view that there is a higher purpose. And this we base not on because we say so, but because there is emotional aspect, there's commitment aspect, there's fidelity parts to a human sexual relation. And this to me speaks that it's a higher purpose than just a function. Sure, it can function for procreation. As you know, I run into people all the time. Tell me about their little surprises. They have a 30-year-old, 28-year-old, 25-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Well, surprise. But it's far beyond that. And that actually, from the Christian viewpoint, human sexuality is a reflection of Him. Because human sexuality basis is not to be self, but giving. And thus, Christ says in the very scripture that Christ gave Himself for the church, and a husband is to love his wife like that. What a standard! What a standard! So that was what we basically went over. And I think today we're going to go into even more bolder, more controversial section in a sense of human rights. As I says, what are human rights? Who gets these rights? How much rights does one get? So that's what we're going to dive right in. Human rights in general. What is a human right? Not where did they come from or why they are, but what is a human right? Privilege. Okay. Any other thoughts? What is a human right? Nicholas Wolsterstorff, who I spent the agony, a joy for the last couple of weeks trying to go through his book as part of my dissertation, and he defines it as an obligation from one person or persons to another. An obligation. So a right isn't just kind of something maybe, it's obligatory. Does this music stand have a right to be treated in a specific way? Say no, because if I knock it over. No, it does not, because it's not a person. What is a person? Made in the image. What happens if you're not a Christian? Does person still applies, right? So what is a person? Living, breathing, but animals live and breathe. I said it's a human being regarded as an individual. And human being, that's individual. You all are individuals out there. We're going to come back to this person thing later. I will ask, does this mean then that animals, insects, and objects don't have rights? Is that what that means? Well, in true philosophical fashion, I am not going to answer that question some other time. But the purpose of asking it is to show that this human right things pertaining to us as persons is not a minor thing. It's a significant thing. And I purport that as we get into the two subjects of today, it will be a key point. The UN Declaration of Human Rights, in its preamble, recognizes, quote, the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Let's zoom in on some of these words. Inherent. Inherent, I'm thinking, it's a permanent attribute to you. Unlike my hairline, other things are permanent attribute. Inalienable, close to inherent. Inalienable is you can't separate these rights from the person. Foundation, the pillar upon which something lies. So when they say the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family, we see where these words come in. And even deeper, inalienable. Can an inalienable right be inalienable right if it's given by a human legislature or organization? No. Why? Ding, yes. What happens if it's given by God? Can an inalienable right be inalienable if it's given by God? What do you think? No? I disagree. Kind of. Okay. So my answer is yes, no. Yes, no. Yes, if God decided to take it away, he could, but he won't, because that would be contrary to his nature. We talked about nature in other classes. I'm not going to go into it here. Inherent. Nicholas Wasserstoff spends a whole book that I slogged through speaking how conferred rights are not inherent. Inherent means it's you and it ain't going to be removed. It's not something that someone gives to you. It is you. So, conferred right by organization, by humans, by social structures, by even God, doesn't work for Wasserstoff. Instead, he grounds human rights in the worth of a person, in the worth. So I had to go through the whole book to get to that part. You don't earn human rights. They remain with you as long as you're human. It doesn't matter what your gender, your age, your experience, your occupation, your intelligence level, or even your consciousness level. Not only some talk about when you fall asleep, do you lose your rights? What? But the mentally impaired, the severely mentally impaired, do they not have rights? Your decision or your choices don't change it. We're going back to that. If you possess rights simply because you're a human, does it matter whether you're religious or not, whether you're a church person or not? Does that make a difference? No. But what does make a difference concerning rights? And Lee already let the cat out of the bag. If you believe in the existence of God, rights cannot be what? Taken away because of believing in the existence of God. And if you at this point are going, that is a huge leap, Kevin. Well, hang on, and I'm going to get there. Maybe quickly, maybe not. But here's a good question. How do we determine what things are considered a right and which things are not? For example, the UN Declaration says that vacation is a human right. Yay! I'd love more rights like that. But how do we determine what things are rights and what things are not human rights? Any ideas? What's that?
You can take it away.
Okay. Hey, I like that. Notice the page is blank because I'm not going to answer it. I couldn't figure that out. Boy, he's some teacher. He has more blank pages than filled in pages. So let's move to the first area. And here's where the test comes in. Let's consider homosexuality in regards to human rights. Consider this hypothetical and see if you agree with me or not. Of course, this part is not hypothetical yet. Let me explain. There was a period in my life, many of you know, that I went through about 16 years of intense doubting and questioning of the Christian faith while I was a Christian. That's a little controversial, but we can do that another day. But let's say during that time, and I did publicly express these doubts in conversations. I didn't get up, at the church and just start pummeling the Christian faith. No, I would seek out counsel. I would seek out intelligent people to talk these things over. That was real. But let's say hypothetically, during that time, let's say the church would immediately and fiercely demand that I just shut up. Stop. You just accept our view, don't question it, or we will throw you out of the church and you can't talk to church people. Would you agree or disagree that that was wrong? That would be wrong. They didn't do that, but hypothetically, do you think that's a wrong approach for the church to take in toward me, or a good approach? Counterproductive. I like you.
Make you progress.
I like how you think. Yeah, I guess you could tell I think it would be a wrong approach. In fact, I've mentored quite a few who have similar situations, and I didn't take that approach. But I did give them homework. So, let's say we bring up the issue of homosexuality, and we doing it respectfully and compassionately. Is it likewise okay to shut down the conversation? I don't think so. As long as civility is the rule, we should be able to talk about anything. I'm serious. Anything should be able to be talked about. We should not have, in the church or outside of the church, the idea that, no, you can't talk about this. You have to accept a view. I call this the tyranny of ideas. So here's the test that I'm offering. I'm offering this test to the LGBTQ community. those who support that community, and the pro-choice community. You decide if I meet the standard of Jesus in this talk today. There'll be email addresses at the end of this presentation, but you test me, not whether you agree with me or not on how I examine or the conclusions, not that, but how I meet the test that Jesus set out. Because when Jesus in John 4, 1 through 42, met the woman at the well, he, I think, set the standard for how we approach controversial things, sticky things, offensive things. Basically, Jesus encountered this woman at the well, and not only did he not share her ethnicity, but he held a different moral view of her situation. Yet, despite disagreeing with this woman, was telling her she was being immoral, this woman at the end ran to the rest of the village and told them about Jesus. She was glad, not angry. Like, whoa. So this is the test I'm offering you to put on me. And I'll confess I didn't sleep so well last night, but I'm serious. Jesus was compassionate, he was respectful, but he didn't shilly-shally. He didn't stray away from the issue. So if we bring up this issue, whoops, sorry, I had a perfect map and I just lost it. So let me assure you that we will not discuss these options today with anything but respect and compassion. I will not allow disdain, either in any part, to be part of the discussion, because I think we should meet the test of Jesus. But I think the question of homosexuality is probably one of the top issues of our culture, only surpassed maybe by racism at this time. So a flippant approach, on either side of the camp, was not fair to the debate. Why? Here's my thought. Unlike adultery, where the focus of adultery is cheating, the focus of these issues, in particular homosexuality, is on people. The proponents of homosexuality see this as an identity issue, not an action issue per se. The homosexual sees himself as being a homosexual, whereas the adulterer is focused on the action of adultery. I think Lady Gaga even had a song that purported this. So I see the question of homosexuality falling into two main categories: the legal or constitutional aspect, and then the moral or right and wrong aspect. Unfortunately, I may find myself in hot water from both camps, and I do not relish that. I just gave a lot of thought to this, done reading. So let's see where we go. Let's tackle the legal question first. And I'm going to tell you, I think it's already been decided legally. It's no longer whether homosexuality is legal. It's now a matter of whether homosexuality in its entirety is not only legal, but accepted as a culture. To be specific, in 2015, Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court ruled that the right to marry is a fundamental right. Remember, we talked about what rights there are. And as such, it is guaranteed to same-sex couples by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. In a majority opinion offered by Justice Anthony Kennedy, there was the idea that harm was being done to individuals by denying them a fundamental right. The 14th Amendment was said to, quote, extend to certain personal choices central to the individual dignity and autonomy, including intimate choices that define personal identity of all beliefs, end quote. So, from my non-lawyer training, my non-lawyer understanding, this was not so much a matter of the right to same-sex to marry as it was marriage in a comprehensive issue. Asking whether it was sufficient justification to deny a class of people this right. This, I think, is what the court decision was, but it has been popularized as a discussion about homosexuality itself. This is not what the justices would appear to do. But I don't have time to go into dissenting opinions of the other justices. What? You almost didn't hear about that. In essence, the dissenting justice challenged whether there was in fact harm being done, and they challenged the legal precedents that the majority view rested upon. So, here's where we are. If we as non-lawyers, as non-justices, are to consider this legal aspect, and this legal aspect alone, how can we not wind up where we have to trust the justices on the Supreme Court? Whoa, Kevin, I don't think I'd like to hear this. Just listen, stay with me, please. So the Supreme Court decision basically rests upon the idea that this people group would be harmed unless they receive the same opportunity for exercising their right as other people groups. What effect does this decision have? To me, it was a de facto validation of the homosexual lifestyle. In the same way, similar to the 14th Amendment, was a validation of the black person. The one clause in that was the quote, all persons, all persons. Can you see? Let me explain this. Can you see how, because of that, public opinion toward homosexuality took a dramatic turn in our culture? Why? Because in a culture, what you legalize is tended to be seen as what is right. This is a result of how culture works. You make something legal, the culture itself tends to see it as now as right. So in effect, this decision validated the homosexual viewpoint in our culture. So any conjectures on what this now boils the debate down to? Example, before, the debate was over a man and a woman marrying. Even slaves could marry as long as they were a man and woman. But now, the basis of the debate is resting on what? Any thoughts? Wisdom, okay, you could say that, but you could say Supreme Court decisions other than this one also to man. I'm purporting it is now a matter of equality of rights. Was there not a matter of equality of rights to marry a man and woman before? Yes, but it was narrowed to a man and a woman. Yes. There was cases where some men could not marry some women and vice versa. And we will not go there this morning. But now it's a matter of equality. Equality is the defining factor. in this issue of human rights of who can marry. To deny marriage to any group would seem to be harmful. Let that sink in. To deny marriage to any group will be seen as harmful to them. That is debatable, but I think that's where that goes. But let's say you say, oops, let me go over here. I got all these little arrows on the paper. You know, when I go back over something, I try to make it make sense, and then it becomes like a Indiana Jones map. In philosophy, we have a faulty way of thinking called fallacies, called the slippery slope. Let me demonstrate it. Let's say when it snows up here, and it does snow once in a while up here, I hear, the township closes the streets to parking so they can plow. A slippery slope fallacy says, oh, look what they're doing. They're taking away our right to park on the street forever, all year, every year, for now to eternity. This is an error of thinking. We call it a slippery slope, an exaggeration. Versus a warranted slippery slope is, in the news, there's debate whether the New York governor should have his COVID emergency authority taken away. Those in the legislature are accusing or asserting that he has gone too far with his authority in this area. I put humorously, you remember where in Star Wars the chancellor took emergency authority and then took over the whole galaxy, and that's the whole Star Wars story? Is he talking about Star Wars in church? Yeah, okay. So this is a justified slippery slope. Why am I saying this? You decide. You decide. Is the Supreme Court decision, as a law expert said, throwing open the door to all demands by all groups to the right of marriage and de facto acceptance in our culture? Or is that just fear-mongering? No one is going to allow pedophiles to marry children, nor less accept it in society. That is not going to happen. So I gave you two views on the slippery slope. Two views. You decide which one it is. You think about it. But let's say you say, I don't, go ahead.
You say pedophilia, and I think you're being serious. You say pedophilia will not become an issue, that it's just not going to happen. But if we can define away what has been revealed to us by God in the Scripture, if we can use the 14th Amendment process clause or some other kind of man-made civil law to make marriage between a man and a man legal, why can't we legalize pedophilia? What would be the difference between the two things?
And that is the one view on the slippery slope, that's where it'll lead. Versus those on the other side of the slippery slope argument would say, that's just fear-mongering. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Started to try to change those ages to make it more acceptable.
Okay. 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 As a philosopher, I love to throw things out, but I love you to think for yourself. If we had opportunity to have those on the other side of the issue, we would allow them to speak. In the church, we should not be afraid of ideas. We should be willing to test ideas. So, let's say you say, I don't care what the justice said, it was wrong. Or on the other side of the view, someone says, I don't care if the justice voted otherwise, it would be wrong not to. Wind up is number two, the moral aspect. I acknowledge that someone could say, hey, this is a closed issue. The Supreme Court decided it's closed, it's no longer relevant. They decided, why are we even trying to bring in the moral aspect? Here's my thought. The Supreme Court, more than 100 years ago, upheld the institution of slavery. The Supreme Court did. Yet, there were those Christian abolitionists and other abolitionists who didn't care what the Supreme Court said. They said it was wrong. Are we going to say that they should not have done that? Because it was legalized, it's a closed deal. Okay? You can see I'm passionate, but I'm saying from a rationality standpoint, you can't have your cake and eat it too. What? Is that in philosophy? Yes, we love to make up memes. Okay, so let me present some of the viewpoints on the homosexuality issue and trying real quickly. I still have abortion to go through this morning. The homosexual viewpoint is, I was born gay. Therefore, homosexuality is who I am. It's my identity. This is who I am. This means if I was born gay and it is who I am, then it must be considered natural and normal. You have no right to tell me it's not or to try and enact things against me. It would be immoral for you to do so. And why do they believe that? This is important. Because their experience tells them those things. Their experience. I'm not saying emotions per se, experience. They're validating those thoughts by their experiences. So no matter how much you agree, disagree, is it still right to treat those we disagree with on this issue with disrespect? I say no. Compassion, yes. Respect, yes. But compassion and respect does not mean you agree with somebody. Tolerance actually is defined as respectfulness while disagreeing. That is no longer the popular view of tolerance. So what about the flip side? Flip side is sex is a sacred thing between a man and woman and only a married man with his wife. Therefore, any sex outside of this situation is not sacred. If it is not sacred, then it is unnatural and abnormal. And I realize this may be very infuriating right now. I am not trying to be abusive. I'm just stating what the positions are. So they would say, this makes homosexuality wrong. And why do they say that? Because they believe God says so. Oh, everybody can say that. Hang on. Either through a source, the Bible, or through theology. The natural function of humans, male and female, would go to the belief of marriage being sacred. So both sides of these issues claim that it is immoral to be on the other side of the issue. And where do we go? Well, let me tell you where you can't go. And I'm going to be stern about this as a philosopher. You cannot say, I will decide the moral issue based on my passion. Your passion can aid your view, but it cannot determine a view. That is not the way to settle issues. Issues must be settled. Moral issues must be settled by a moral standard. What standard are you using? You cannot use because I just feel this way. I'm sorry. I'm not meaning to be whatever the word is, but that is intellectually, rationally, academically a correct thing. You don't decide issues because of your experiences or your passions. Let me ask you, what source are you using to make a moral decision? I will tell you, this community would welcome you to come and experience us as we seek out a moral standard. We would welcome you. Even if you are passionately on the other side, we will welcome you. Those are not words. Those are truly meaning. So let's quickly try to do the abortion issue. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to deny that, like homosexuality, abortion is not also highly controversial. Are the two polar opposites reconcilable? Let's find out. I could go into the history of abortion, Planned Parenthood, etc., but I'm going to try and be as brief as possible, which by now for you and been in my classes, you know that's an outright lie. But therefore, I'll do my best to give both sides of the issue. First, the pro-choice view. The pro-choice position or wording has changed. It's changed. It used to be where they called the unborn a mass of tissue. They no longer call it that. They used to call the unborn a fetus. They no longer call it that. What they call it now is a baby. What? Before you think this is a concession to the pro-life side, or you think the debate rests on whether the baby, the unborn baby, is alive, it's not. Don't think either of those two things. The debate is not about whether it's alive. What? Hang on. The pro-choice position does not focus on these things. They're irrelevant. That's why they can call it a baby. The pro-choice position now focuses on personhood. The unborn baby is not considered a person, at least in part. Why? Because the emphasis or the justification for the pro-choice position rests on the rights of the pregnant woman. Why? The pro-choice position holds that the unborn baby negatively impacts the mother's mental or physical health, the welfare of the family, or the state of her future. Mental. It negatively impacts her mentally because she may have been raped, or she may not be mentally ready for children. Physical. She may not be physically in the best position for pregnancy. Welfare of the family. Why do the pro-choice hold that it's a negative impact? She and her family may not be financially able for more children or children, period. And this is especially relevant, they say, to the poor community. The future. Children are a huge time and energy burden. Amen, right, parents? This could negatively impact her career. Oh, wait a minute. They say, what happens if she's a single mother? She's the sole breadwinner. So this is their position. Secondly, the pro-life position. This position has basically stayed the same with some updates for technology. The unborn is a person from conception. Why? Why do we say that? Because we picked something and landed on it, or because we say so? No. It's because when the sperm fertilizes the egg, it becomes what they call a zygote. This zygote now has all the chromosomes necessary to become an adult, minus two things: protection and nutrition. Protection and nutrition. Let me ask, what does a toddler, an elementary grade school kid, and I would say now that I'm grown up, and a teenager need to grow up to be an adult? The minimum: nutrition and protection. That's why we place personhood at conception. If they're a person, then the human being has rights, human rights. Thus, to terminate the baby would to end personhood, or what the pro-life position calls murder. Whoa, that was a buzzword I know in this issue. But a murder is a violation of a human being's rights. So maybe you can see now that the debate boils down to rights, and rights boil down to personhood. It's not about whether the baby is alive. That is irrelevant to both sides' position. Article 6 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights says, quote, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law, end quote. Ooh, that sounds good. Listen to this. Article 1, quote, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, end quote. When does the right start to them? Birth. That's when rights start. Let me ask quickly, is birth the best criteria for personhood? In fact, setting it at birth is not even set. It's not even a consensus there. Kitwood defines personhood as a starting or status that is bestowed upon one human being by others in the context of a relationship or social being. Remember what Lee said earlier? Go back and review and see what he said. Sullivan reports that abortion proponents, since we live in a pluralistic society, the personhood of the fetus is a value judgment upon which honest people may differ. Personhood is what you decide it to be. So by these two citations, I think we can see there's a subjectivism, an arbitrariness to the definition of personhood. So is defining personhood starting at birth also subjective? You can see I'm saying that. I didn't say birth is not decisive. Ladies, would you say birth is decisive? I think you would, right? It's a decisive moment. Either the baby's in or he's out, you know. And it's a dramatic experience, you tell me. But by subjective, I mean there is not a good reason to put it at birth, because there's other positions. Some believe personhood starts when the baby starts looking like a person in the womb. Some believe it's when brain waves start. And thus you have second trimester, third trimester debates. Okay? So my contention, rationally speaking, why not set personhood at a point that best protects personhood, the rights of the person? Why are we setting it at a later point in the pregnancy, risking being in error and violating personhood? If setting it at conception is in fact in error and it's later, we've actually gone overboard to protect the person. But if it's set later and it's actually earlier, we have violated personhood. This is my point basically on abortion. We do recognize that a woman's right is the key emphasis in the pro-choice position. I understand why they're saying that. But if it's all about rights, then why isn't it about all rights? Let me say that again. If it's all about rights, then why isn't it about all rights? Because the unborn baby is not a person until fill in the blank. Okay, I'm having an imaginary conversation. So isn't the pro-choice agenda speaking up for women since they believe that the women's rights are not being upheld? I think they would say yes. Why then, though, can't the pro-life position speak up for the unborn, since to the pro-life position, their rights aren't being upheld? Well, because they're not a person yet. Well, we talked about that. Okay? So here's the difference to me, though. a woman at least can speak up for her rights. How can the unborn speak up for their rights? They are both silent and defenseless. Why wouldn't we take a conservative approach on personhood? I'm not talking political conservative. I'm not talking party. I'm talking in a sense of discernment. Why wouldn't we err on the side of caution when it comes to personhood? Why risk it? This is not a little matter of you violated my rights to have a certain color on my truck. This is talking about the personhood of an individual ending. I, as a retired military person, even still struggle with the question of taking another life in combat, in justified combat. If it is so very much about rights, then why not equally protect the rights of the unborn? If it is so very much about defending the rights, then why not defend the most vulnerable members of our culture who can't speak up for themselves, who can't act for themselves? Lastly here, ending on this page, I'm not standing here being judgmental for those who support the pro-choice position, who've had an abortion. Believe me, I'm not. I want to exude compassion and respect. But let's not confuse that with saying that that necessarily means we approve. If you come to this fellowship, I'm going to go out on a limb and guarantee you that if we find out that you had an abortion, that we're not going to kick you out. We're not going to ridicule you. I can almost, because I've experienced it in other churches, women will come and put their arms around you and fellowship with you. I can virtually guarantee that. But ending, as long as we're focused on rights, let's revisit the very first thing we talked about. Rights, human rights, are a matter of human worth. Human worth is the basis for human rights. These rights are not conferred by any organization or any other human. They are inherent. So why wouldn't the worth of the unborn baby be the same as the worth of the mother? Why wouldn't the rights of the unborn baby be the same as the rights of the woman? I'm opening that question up. Again, you can give me feedback on your test. If you want to disagree, I'm asking you to do it civilly. I have had responses on Facebook involving the F word over and over and over and defaming me as a person. Okay, I understand you're passionate, but I will treat you with the respect. I ask you to do the same, but let's dialogue. I'll dialogue with you. I'll discuss this with you because it is such an important issue in our culture. Father, I'll confess to you that right now I feel like I've just failed miserably. What I wanted to communicate doesn't seem like it came through, but maybe I'm confusing that, Lord, with the intensity of this culture's view, one camp versus another. Father, what I pray for is that we would find the correct view, the true view. Not necessarily saying it's the religious view, but what is the true, rational, correct view when we come to what we choose as a lifestyle and what we choose in regard to the unborn? Thank you, Jesus, that you do not throw us away. Amen.